Kia ora koutou. Welcome to the Creative Waikato Arts and Wellbeing panel discussion. My name is Dr. Jeremy Mayall, and I'm the CEO of Creative Waikato. I'm also a composer and an artist, as well as being a researcher interested in the connection between the arts and well-being, and hence part of this discussion today. Very honoured and privileged to be joined by this illustrious panel. Moving around the screen, we have Horomona Horo, we have Mayor Paula Southgate, we have Stephanie Christie, we have Dr. Laura Haughey, we have Andy Mannering, and translating for us in New Zealand Sign Languages, Sandal Wihong. So for us, the arts are a vital aspect of the lives of individuals and their communities. As our Prime Minister, Right Honourable Jacinda Ardern said, arts and culture are not a nice to have. They're an essential part of our individual community and national identity. For too long, they have been treated differently when it comes to sustainable growth, career paths, and economic benefits. My ambition is to have an environment where we no longer question the value of the arts, to have young people who consider careers in the arts as viable, and for all communities to have easy access to cultural experiences. I think that's a really key thing for us to consider. And so well-being comes in many forms. For local governments, they identify 4 categories, being social, economic, environmental, and cultural. And the arts is woven into all 4 of these categories in various ways. It benefits all facets of our society and community. Each creative project involves itself in these 4 intertwined components to different extents. And while for those involved in the arts this is very clear, for others the connection may not seem as obvious. There is a perceived value issue around arts and culture, despite their importance being explored through groups like UNESCO and United Cities and local governments. Of these 4 well-beings, it is cultural well-being that can be the hardest to define and understand. And so cultural well-being can broadly encompass values, shared beliefs, customs, behaviours, and identity. And these sometimes intangible qualities help to shape and define who we are as New Zealanders, our sense of space and place as individuals and communities, and they can help to make our country the diverse place that it is. Arts and creative and cultural activities are very evident means by which groups express and maintain their cultures, and they are central to the well-being of a community. Cultural well-being looks different in our diverse communities and needs to be addressed within different contexts. We must acknowledge the well-being of tangata whenua and understand well-being from a te ao Māori perspective, as well as being central to our understanding of well-being in Aotearoa. And for this to happen, we need to support and protect our cultural identity and taonga, including local knowledge of te reo Māori and sites of significance, as well as providing opportunities for their expression. The value of having a community engaging in all kinds of creative and cultural practices is wide-ranging. These benefits can include benefits for mental health as well as for physical health, a greater sense of belonging and social cohesion, improved self-esteem and confidence, transformative educational outcomes, and growing social prosperity. Having said all that, as an artist myself, I very much believe that arts are so hugely beneficial for our well-being, and I think one of the clearest signs of that is the overwhelming cultural renaissance that seems to be happening online at the moment, with people doing live stream performances and video things and putting up recordings and sharing poetry and visual arts and photography. And arts are a coping mechanism for humanity, and I think as we are together but apart globally, we find solace in the arts and what that means for us finding comfort in the uncomfortable and being able to kind of understand where we are and how we connect with other people. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker for tonight. a great friend and collaborator of mine, Horomona Horo. So Horo is a composer, practitioner, and cross-genre collaborator, fusing the instruments of tango poro with a diverse range of cultural and musical forms. He immerses himself in unique sounds and techniques, and understands the intrinsic significance and practices of tango poro, not only of their musical significance, but also how the instruments are part of the holistic culture of all life, birth, death, and nature to which he was born. I'm going to let him talk more about his work and how it all fits in. Horo.
Tuatahi, tēnei au, tēnei momo huihuinga e tuku mihi ki a koutou katoa. Koutou, ngā kai kōrero o te pōnei, ki a koe e te manuhuia e Paula, tēnei ka mihi ake ki a koe, ko koe rā tira hei tukuna ngā momo ko tuitui ngā kōrero mō Waikato whānui, mō kirikiri roa, o reira tēnei te mihi ake ki a koe. Ko e rā atu o ngā kai kōrero o te pōnei, tēnei te mihi nui ki a koutou, tai atu ki a koe Jeremy, ko tāu anō tērā e koropupu ana ngā reo puoro ki te ao whānui. First and foremost, greetings to everybody that is out there in the great world of the internet that is listening here this afternoon, this evening. First and foremost, I'd just like to acknowledge the Honourable Mayor, Paula, for being in this what I call Zooey, a Zoom hui, and for being able to be a part of the discussion on the well-being of our arts, the well-being of us and our communities, and what the voices of arts can provide for our communities regionally, nationally, and globally. To each and every other spokesperson for the evening, I'd just like to pay homage and respect to each of you individually, as well as a collective, with the knowledge and the insight that we can all individually bring to the discussion tonight. It's very important and very, I suppose, cohesive for the time we are in, as well as the way in which this is being presented, not only through voice and sound, but also through one of our national languages, being that of the sign language. This I acknowledge to my brother from another mother, Jeremy. It's always a pleasure being able to do any kaupapa, anything with you, brother. I know every time we have gotten together, it's been a creative fusion of discussions, both on the ethereal level, as well as the knowledge and sharing that can be interwoven and spread through the many platforms that you and I work in. And so my name is Horomona Horo, and I derive from the Hokianga, from a place called Kaikohe, as well as in a small place down on the west coast called Rahotu, Opunake, and also my grandfather's from the east coast. I also have roots going back to England, Scotland, and Portugal. So I'm a wonderful fruit salad. I reside here in Hamilton, and Wellbeing is one of the unsung heroes in terms of our everyday lives. Whereas during the time that we're in at the moment, that unsung hero has come to the forefront. And the well-being, now that we are all in our bubbles, that particular special seed that our well-being has for us in being human has actually been enlightened, been invigorated through our lockdown, through this rahui that we are in. In doing so, the voices of our people have come out in many creative ways. As Jeremy has already said, it is that creative aspect of us that keeps that fire burning, and that keeps us invigorated, that keeps us sane inside of our bubbles, whether our bubbles are 2 people or whether our bubbles are a lot of people. It is something that keeps us connected to the outside world, and I'm really looking forward to tonight's discussion. And I'll just finish off with one proverb that my ancestors laid out. Actually, the tohunga or the shaman that this came from was from a small place just south of Wanaka in the South Island. And this proverb is one proverb that we in the practice of traditional Māori musical instruments, taonga pūoro, follow, and we've followed for a very long time. And it goes, kei a te pō te tīmatatanga o te waiatatanga mai a te atua, ko te ao mārama, ko te ao tūroa, which translates to be, it was in the night where the gods sang the world into existence, from the world of light into the world of music and art. Kia ora.
Awesome. Right, next up we have Stephanie Christie. Stephanie is a poet, an artist, and as she puts it, an extreme dreamer. She lives and works in Hamilton, New Zealand, and she works as a creative coach as well as an artist. And she works with people to get them into creative habits, to work towards the next steps on their creative projects, to help inspire inspiration and well-being through art, and to help artists to clarify their vision for moving forward with their creative work and their creative life. And it's a real pleasure to have Stephanie here to share some of her thoughts on this.
Ora koutou. Thank you, Jeremy, and my esteemed panelists and everybody out there. So Jeremy has introduced me so beautifully, and my primary creative drive is to work with words, and this is such an interesting time to be in lockdown because the urge to create is strong, but then the level of general disruption and anxiety is also high. So I have first of all a message for anyone who is a creative person for your own well-being. If at the moment you're feeling stuck creatively and struggling with motivation, I really suggest that you do your best to work with this. My suggestion would be to start with something really light and playful. Do something every day, maybe something even not in your usual medium if necessary, if it's going to help you develop a small fun project that will just get you into that creative zone every day, because it is so important for your well-being. Also, sharing your work on Instagram or with your friends can be a really good way to move it along so that you create space for new work. Also, if you want more specific help, you can always contact Paul or any of the team at Creative Waikato, and they will be able to help you troubleshoot setting up some solutions so that you can get making again. As Jeremy has said, creativity is really shining at the moment around the world and in New Zealand in the realm of the arts. Well, actually, just in all the realms. It's really very interesting. So one of the things that I want to distinguish between is the arts in general and creativity as a function of the human brain, and something that some people are especially fixated on. Often they're sort of put together, but it's quite useful to tease them out, I think. So the arts in themselves, I think, carry a lot of intrinsic meaning and satisfaction for pretty much everybody. And I think that the evidence of this is that up and down the country right now, there are people playing the guitar who have not played the guitar in a long time and are very, very happy to be doing it. So moving away from the arts as a series of activities that permeate all of society, I think a lot of the creative explosion in the arts that we're seeing online at the moment is really responsive and engaging with the particular situation, the pandemic, the lockdown, creative crisis, the crisis in capitalist system, everything that's going on at the moment. And for me, that is extraordinary because it has been so fast. And I think that that is a real indication of one of the special things about the creative brain. So as an example of this, there's a website called The Poetry Shelf. And this is a New Zealand website, and that is at the moment sharing work that is made from people in response to being in the lockdown. And if you go on there and look at that stuff, you'll find things that are extremely specific namings of moments and experiences that you're having that are totally unique to this time, that no one has ever communicated about before. One of the reasons that I think it's so fast is that creative people, in my opinion, are built to respond to a changing world. So in normal times, we are actually already responding, but a lot of the time people don't necessarily want to know that the change is happening, which is where a bit of the resistance to creativity in the arts can happen, I think. So we're busy noticing things and then changing. We're sensitive to patterns. We question norms. We like to gather ideas together and smush them and they come up with new ideas. And we do this relentlessly over decades, over lifetimes, in whatever our area of interest is. So because we are built to adapt to change, this means that in the realm of the arts, people who are creative in the arts can lead to enormous cultural shifts. So this, I think, is something that we're really seeing at the moment. And I believe that this has actually been a huge key to our survival as a species, because the environment that we're in, the situation we're in, changes, and we need new meanings. We need new words, we need new images, new visions to be able to really change our behavior, change our thoughts to adapt. So the arts, we can see, provide us with adaptation, beauty, entertainment, bonding opportunities, and so on. And if we want this kind of cultural aid in this kind of time, we need to take care of the people who are creative in the arts. I'd really like to acknowledge that in the New Zealand cultural environment, this can be an uphill battle for a lot of people because practical support can be inconsistent. The way people talk about the arts and wider society can be very ambiguous in terms of how much they value it. So everyone that we see who is making work in response to what's going on at the moment has probably been able to do that because they were already doing creative stuff. They already had an active creative practice despite these obstacles. So what this means is if we want to keep having this stuff in the future, keep having stuff that helps us find meaning and adapt and see life in the way that we need to be able to see it in the future, we need to be taking care of people who are creative now. So of course, this often means money for individual works, for dedicated spaces, for organisations that provide that support. And it also means that we need to be engaging with their work, because for a lot of creative people, actually having people letting you know that they love your work or buying your work or coming to see your work is just so satisfying, so meaningful and so reinforcing. So the well-being of creatives in the arts impacts on the well-being of everyone, and it's especially true in times like this when we need to make sense of a confusing time and a changing world. So the well-being of society depends on our adaptation, and this is something that creative people in the arts are especially able to help with. That's all.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Steph. Next up, we have Dr. Laura Haughey. Laura, I've known for a little while now. Laura loves examining how we communicate through the body and finding new creative possibilities working across languages and cultures. She's interested in how embracing diversity can impact positively on creative approach, and her research interests are in working across languages and cultures, inclusive theatre practice, and neuroscience. She's taught internationally and is now based in New Zealand at the University of Waikato. And since arriving in New Zealand, she's directed and devised 2 large-scale original theatre productions working with deaf and hearing actors, At the End of My Hands and Salonika. So, Laura, tell us about your work.
Hi everybody, and hello to everyone out there, and thank you again to the panel here this evening. I'm excited to be here today talking about a topic that's close to my heart. I'm just going to come in because I think my microphone's a little bit on the quiet side. But I have a very vested interest in the arts and well-being. My path actually started with me inhabiting these worlds quite separately at first until they merged. I actually trained and qualified as a physiotherapist over in the UK whilst touring with a dance theatre company. So I've always understood the inherent link between the arts, health and well-being. Jeremy's kindly introduced some of my research interests. So I'm particularly fascinated by working across languages and cultures and inclusive, accessible theatre practice. And these interests have been shaped by my kind of working as an artist, making things and seeing and understanding the benefits of the arts on so many facets of well-being, from feeling included to feeling heard, feeling seen, feeling connected, being able to express what's inside us and share that with others. And there are two facets of my work that I just wanted to share with you briefly today, which I hope highlight specific benefits of how the arts can positively impact on well-being from a health perspective, but also from a cultural well-being perspective. And one is my work on developing embodied and moving mindfulness practices for actors and dancers. So working on our connection to ourselves and the present moment, being in our bodies. And one is my work alongside the deaf community through Equal Voices Arts. So I started on this path in inclusive theatre when I got my first professional acting gig with a company called Common Ground Sign Dance Theatre in England. And I toured with them nationally in the UK and across Europe for about 8 years. And it was a deaf-led company. So I was in a really fortunate position to be able to access my dance theatre training from deaf artists. And I crucially got precious insight into cultural awareness and respect, which has shaped all my work to date. And it was from there that I founded Equal Voices, which had a focus on access and inclusion and involved working alongside disabled and deaf artists in professional and community contexts. And when I moved to Aotearoa, we started work here by building a community right from the grassroots level. So we started off by providing actor training workshops in NZSL for the deaf community. And from there, we worked towards two major productions, one toured internationally. And we were integrating NZSL and English on stage to create original devised work accessible to both deaf and hearing audiences. And we're currently in our research and development phase for our latest production, which we're really excited about. We're developing with an international team of deaf and hearing artists, including members of our core team here in the Waikato. We have a deaf company manager, Rachel Turner-Fahey. We have a new deaf dancer from the Waikato that we've been really excited to be working with. And we're working with a deaf choreographer from the UK called Denise Armstrong. We're meant to be in physical rehearsals right now, so we're currently figuring out what that's going to look like moving forwards. But in all our productions, NZSL and English, they're not directly translated, but they're given the same priority on stage. So not all that's signed is spoken, not all that's spoken is signed. But overall, the dramaturgies, the storylines, the narratives weave together to offer an accessible experience for both deaf and hearing audiences. In this way, we found that we can play with the narratives for each community. So we respect their very different cultural experiences and diversity. And this placement of languages puts forward a political statement, a cultural statement of equality. So we wanted to put deaf characters on stage, sharing deaf stories, sharing deaf culture, sharing deaf worldview, which is what we try and do. And we're now in the process of offering professional training in sign theatre, again led by an international deaf hearing team. Another project that's been a little bit delayed by lockdown, but we're again working through that and looking at different possibilities. But so just some snippets of feedback coming from some of our performances and workshops that I thought was pertinent to share were things like empowerment, seeing NZSL on stage in the hands of a first language user, sharing stories of cultural identity, sharing deaf culture with a wider audience, raising the profile of deaf arts, physical storytelling, increasing the visibility of NZSL, the creative benefits of deaf gain, which is a concept that refers to the reframing perceptions of deafness. So instead of looking at something that's lacking, instead we look at the gains that are brought about by diversity, so sensory diversity, and how these gains can be repurposed as creative possibilities, amongst many other benefits. So to summarize, I suppose my work in a nutshell is connection to self, and then connection to others, sharing the human experience in all its diversity and glory. And I suppose my vision moving forwards is that one day accessibility and inclusion will be embedded so that we can all access artistic, creative opportunities for our well-being, our growth, for processing and understanding the world around us, which I think now is probably as important as it's ever been. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Next up to speak is Mayor Paula Southgate. Mayor Paula is passionate about Hamilton. She grew up and raised a family here, and she loves Hamilton. She values what Hamilton has to offer and is a supporter of enhancing our city through its various strengths and resources, including its arts and culture. Part of what the new council has been doing with Mayor Paula since the election late last year has been explore the importance of well-being for the city and how that informs the long-term plan and aspirations for our city. So, Mayor Paula.
Thank you. Kia ora tātou. It's really a privilege and a pleasure to be here. I'm not a performer. I'm not a poet. I'm not really an artist. I play with those things from time to time and derive, as most people do, a lot of pleasure from having a go at various things. I've had a tree in Trees at Meteor. I've been in trash to fashion, even got a third place once wearing a paper mache suit called Power Suit for a Politician. So I like to dabble and explore and play and see what I can create, just like I think every human does. So that's at a personal level. I very much enjoy, as most people do, being able to access the talents of other people, whether it's musical, performance, or physical arts, visual arts. I take a lot of pleasure in those, and I know that those are good for the wider community as well. From a political lens, I don't need to be persuaded of the well-beings of culture and arts for our community. I know they are real. They have been recognised by the United Nations in the Sustainable Development Goals and well beyond. It's just known that a place that has strong arts and culture supports the strong well-being of people in a general sense. So Jeremy's right. Council has been working across 4 well-beings, and in my view, all 4 are important if we're going to have a totally connected and well community. So first of all, of course, not in any particular order, there is the economic well-being. People need to have enough money to get by, and we're struggling with that at the moment. And I know a lot of people are hurting. Second of all, we have to have social well-being, and that's also taking a bit of a hit at the moment as people are struggling to get through COVID. And there's cultural well-being, and then there is environmental well-being. Our council takes all 4 of those well-beings seriously. The government made it quite clear that local government is to deliver on 4 well-beings, not just one, not just economic, but all of the others alongside. The hard times of COVID, as everyone else has said, have been made somewhat better by all the amazing creativity that people have shared with each other to throw some light on the darkness. And I've certainly appreciated that. I've been moved to tears by some of the things that I've seen or read. And I've also had, completely belly laugh over some of the things that have appeared. And it's been good for me either which way. It's helped me navigate what we're going through. And I'm in awe of the amazing things that people can create at a local level right in their own homes, or by teaming up online with people. I mean, goodness me, we've had tenors, 10 tenors all across the screen singing at once, in total unity and harmony, an aria or whatever. And it's moving. And then we've had that wonderful family from Wellington doing a dance and a song that went viral across the globe, and so much more besides, and children doing things. And especially to get children through this really tough time of no school, we draw on the ability to be creative in so many ways, to spend some time doing things that they might not necessarily have as much time to do, creative things, making things, exploring things, discovering what things look like. And that's really important. I just want to touch on two wellbeings that are really relevant to this discussion that Council was working through before COVID hit, and we'll get back to afterwards. And one of those is our social wellbeing. We know that arts and culture play a part in social wellbeing because they connect people. They connect people by bringing them together in spaces and places to spend meaningful time and connection together, enjoy things, to laugh, to cry, to sing, to play. I think also it's important that communities are vibrant. We all know that a city full of dull grey buildings would not be the sort of city that anybody really wants to live in. We want to live in a city where there are, there is colour, where there are installations, where there is music, and all of that. The other thing is, I think it's really important that people feel like they belong, that this is their place. And how do they feel like they belong? They only feel like they belong when they see themselves reflected in their place. And that's where arts and culture plays a huge part. I also just want to talk about cultural well-being. And it's really awesome that tonight that we're joined by Horomona to talk on that more specifically. But I believe that cultural well-being is about values. It's a way of arts and culture being able to protect and enhance a culture's values, tangata whenua and other ethnicities. And actually, as Mayor, I'm in a very privileged position because prior to COVID, there wouldn't be many evenings or weekends that I hadn't been invited to something of a celebration in the ethnic community or the artistic community. It's about values, it's about beliefs, and it's about heritage. It's about all of those things. And those are really fundamental to human well-being. Again, I come back to, if you can't see your values, your beliefs, and your heritage reflected in your place, then I believe you feel displaced. And that's where arts and culture comes to the fore. So going on after this lockdown, Council will be looking at what we do to play our part in ensuring that those well-beings are achieved. Connectedness, vibrancy, belonging, valuing, heritage. And at some stage, Council will start talking with the wider community, with all of you, about what that means and how we can work together to achieve it. So thank you again for the privilege of being part of this. As I say, arts and culture isn't my personal strength. I guess I'm a politician. But what I will do is be an advocate for that wellbeing in our community now and going forward.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Last up, I'm going to get Mr. Andy Mannering to speak a little bit. Now, Andy is here as part of this panel with his involvement in Hamilton City Council, and particularly around the Future Hamilton research, which is looking at the kind of aspirational future for the city and what that means for the people within it and letting the people have their voice. And if you want to tell us a little bit about that, and maybe share your own responses to the connection between art and well-being, and how this is all working out for you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jeremy. I feel like each of you have stolen so many words from myself in terms of when I was thinking about what is it that I would want to articulate and communicate, and I was just hearing so many little bits that I went, no, I can't really say that anymore. It feels like I'm just literally stealing, copying what you've said, but I do want to say thank you for creating this opportunity, Jeremy. We've sat many times, and over the last 6 months, we've talked a lot about where do things connect in our city, and how do we make our city better? How do we position ourselves into a place where people feel a part of it, as me and Paula was talking about, but people thrive and they feel connected. And part of the work that we were doing from a council perspective around Future Hamilton was to go, actually, when we talk about economic, cultural, social, environmental well-being, they can never stand separate. We might refer to them as pole of a house, or we might refer to them as elements of what well-being looks like, but they don't succeed just by themselves. They actually do have that interconnectivity, and arts, particularly in terms of the creative way that we engage with our world around us, totally weaves its way through lots of the elements there. And so we were talking, how do we get the best spread for us as a community to look at what words we would use to describe what well-being looks like. And so the Future Hamilton work was really around going, if we look at cultural well-being, what top 3 words would we think about if we're thinking about our city as a place that it honors and acknowledges our past, and acknowledges also something we talked about, the future, not just using art as a way to hold on to heritage and respect the past, but actually how do we dream aesthetically and dream creatively together. And so the work was really to say, initially, jump on and share your voice, so that when our councillors can see a number of words, that they can talk about our 10-year plan and the projects that we do in a way that actually connects to what we aspirationally want as people who live here. That piece of work has been interrupted, as we all recognise and affect. And as me and Paula said, we'll kind of get back to some of that. It is still currently live. We haven't just been pumping it as much as we were before we all started doing Zoom Haughey's instead of doing face-to-face stuff. But just really wanted to kind of say, in terms of the way that we dream and aspire our city to be, it starts by us actually knowing that we can have our voices heard. And so really want to acknowledge, Jeremy, you creating this space for us to talk about the importance of all of these elements, that when we talk about well-being, I don't think anyone can talk about it in a black and white world. We do talk about it with the full riot of colour that takes place. And, that's what we want to be able to say when we look at our budgets, that we're not just looking at lines on the page, but we're thinking about aspirationally, what do our people want to call home here? Those who live, those who visit, those who just study with us for a short time, what is it that connects them to this time and place and allows them to leave their stamp that makes us better? So, kia ora.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And I know that we do have 2 representatives from Hamilton City Council here, but the discussion that we're having is in no way only linked to Hamilton. It's relevant for the entire Waikato. It's relevant for the entire nation and the entire world, I think. The role that well-being plays for, and the arts within that, and culture within that, and all of these different components within that play for people having a sense of belonging and a sense of space to be and to create and to thrive and to share, I think is great. And I think that this is this opportunity to kind of reflect on that collectively and share those thoughts and start that discussion towards the aspirations for the future is really exciting. So there's been a few questions come through on the thing, but before we go into the questions, I just wanted to give all of the panelists an opportunity to respond to what others have said on the panel. We've all listened to each other, and we're all speaking similar things in different ways, and I just wondered if there's anything particularly kind of leaping out for you in terms of a question or a response or a thought as to anyone else who has spoken.
I have a thought, which is kind of coming out of something that Andy said, although I can't explain how it connects directly. But it's the thing of what people want, and I think in some ways we don't always know what we want, and part of what arts do is it helps us work it out. Because one of the things that I noticed is that it's shopping. Now that we've stopped shopping so much, it made me think shopping is part of what we do instead of cultural practices, instead of arts practices in our society. I do believe that there is a way in which the shopping and the capitalism actually replaces that other kind of meaningfulness. And I do think we've got a craving for that deeper meaningfulness. And I think people are really sort of going, oh, look, I can actually find it without having to just do my default shopping kind of activity.
Yeah, one of the things that I really found been a real eye-opener, especially during this COVID rahui time, is the effects of this COVID lockdown to those things that people have mentioned in terms of culture, in terms of being, in terms of practices. Seeing the depth of legislation that has happened in terms of how far, especially speaking from a Te Ao Māori perspective, because I've had a number of friends and relatives that have had family members, not of the COVID virus, but unfortunately they have lost family members, and all of the things that are attached to what usually would happen by people going to the marae, people sharing the stories of that loved, the memories of that loved family member, and the involvement of the wider family in the processes of uplifting that pain, uplifting that sorrow of the loss of the family member, right through to the sharing of food. What this lockdown has done is changed a number of processes of engagement. It's changed a number of ways in which we are able to still obtain the cultural traditions via Zoom, where you have numbers of elders up and down the country that are like us here and now jumping on Zoom, having multitudes of people on Zoom for that particular occasion, and having that platform as the gathering, as if it was going to be on a marae, and sharing the whai kōrero, the oratory, sharing the song, the waiata. The only thing not a part of the process, of course, is the sharing of kai, of the food. And as people have spoken, the number of creative ways we have been able to use this time in thinking about how connected we are as a people. What are the foundations in which we hold close to ourselves? And when those things are challenged, how do we uphold the manner and the prestige of those traditions until the time where it can be reinvigorated, reenacted, and revitalized through the hope of one day. The level 4 goes down to level 3, eventually to level 2, and if things go well, we can go back being a bit more mindful of us as a connection of our region, our nation, and our culture. And not just being in that te ao Māori culture, but us as the people of New Zealand, and how much of a connector we are for many, many people outside of our own country. And well, just as an example of that, we go back to a way in which our Prime Minister has put this lockdown on, taken it to the level 4, given us the guidelines, still unsure of what and how it would happen, but response and the reaction that New Zealand overall have actually done, and the way in which we've done it. There are schools up and down our country at the moment where staff members of schools have choreographed, songs that to be shared with their students, to let them know that this is the time, even though we're in our bubbles, that we can share, and we can do it in a creative way, and we're still here for you. There are, as the likes of Paula has mentioned, there have been New Zealand organisations, companies that have shown ads on TV that have, shown that New Zealand ingenuity, that creative spark that makes us different to the rest of the globe in our unique way. We are a small nation, but we are a nation that doesn't give up. We are a creative nation, and this time that we are in actually lets us know that, it gives us hope in human nature. It gives us hope in our creative energy. It gives us hope when we take away the glamour and the blitz of the creative arts. But when you look deeper into the history of our creative arts, spoken word, visual arts, performance arts, music arts, what were they in the beginning of our histories? They were the voices of our communities in times of trouble. They were the voices of our communities in times when change needed to happen. They were the voices in our communities when calamity happened. And that was the colour and the warmth and that fire that warmed the wider communities of our villages of that particular time. And here we are, 2020, in this world of technology, continuing in that same way. And how can we persevere, keep that resilience going forward? And it is part of that whole holistic well-being of us being a people. And so I think everybody has mentioned it, as Andy said, that everyone has interwoven words, which no doubt has created questions that you have a few of. And so, but I just want to acknowledge what everyone has said, because we all come from different areas, all come from different backgrounds, but we all share that same thought. We all share that same response to the question. We all feel and have an understanding of how we can respond together, how we can respond even though we are apart. We are together in terms of the way in which we can move forward.
Awesome. We'll just go to a couple of questions in the comments there. A question for Laura. Has your work crossed paths with art therapy? And also curious if you're aware of similar work with blind people.
Yes, I've worked quite a lot with art therapists in the UK setting up projects, and we often take quite a multidisciplinary approach to particularly large-scale community projects. And it's so great to be able to get that sort of expertise feeding in as we respond to the individual nature of the group that we work with, which is different every time. With some of the work we do to reach out to the blind community or the deaf-blind community as well, is that we offer tactile tours before our performances, which means that we can invite people in early so they can actually feel the set, and sometimes we'll even have the actors perform sections of it, and people can come and be amongst them and feel them and kind of immerse themselves in that space, which we found to be quite helpful. We offer scripts out before shows that help the amazing deaf-blind interpreters do their quite amazing job. So that's some ways that we try and think creatively to try and ensure access as widely as possible.
Awesome. And a question for our Hamilton City Council representatives. Will HCC be establishing an arts recovery strategy?
That's a good question. We will certainly be looking to review how we support the arts going forward so that it's sufficient to get the arts up and running again. I've done a little bit of thinking around that because picking up on the other points around the connecting and healing aspects of arts and just what it does also for the economy, for jobs, for the economy and much else besides. I've been doing a little bit of early thinking with staff around how we might celebrate is the wrong word, and I know I'm going to use it anyway, how when we are out of lockdown and we're able to come into public spaces and mingle amongst each other again, how we must then have a celebration of that freedom that we get back with both the arts and culture, and especially, as you've said, the values of our tangata whenua. They should be able to, if you like, open up our city again, the heart of our city again. So I have been thinking about how we do that, how we create an opportunity to bring people back together in a really lovely and creative way, with some performing, with some activities along our central city, for example, also with wine and food, of course, because businesses will have been closed and people's confidence about going out into public spaces with other people will be quite low. So I think there's a fantastic opportunity for us to run an event alongside other people to put the fire again underneath that beautifulness that we have in our public events and public spaces. That's one idea that's very much in the formation. In terms of the long haul, there's so many complexities to work through. We have projects underway that we hope will still come underway on time, like the Waikato Regional Theatre, for example. We have other theatres that will have really been hit by COVID, such as Clarence Street Theatre, which had to cancel a number of productions, and that was really going to hit them in the pocket. We hope that we'll be able to work with them to make sure they can open again, because we do need them. The Meteor also, another place, Rivoli Theatre, all of those places will have taken a hit. Notwithstanding that, every kind of gallery, whether it's the public galleries of the Waikato Arts Museum or whether it's the smaller boutique galleries, will also have suffered as businesses. So we've got to see this in context. Creative Waikato, we need to work with you to determine where we put our resource the best, to get the best result from our resource. Unfortunately, council won't have all of the money it needs to fix everything overnight, so we've got to move forward positively and take some steps. That's my view anyway. I know that we have a council who value the arts and culture very much in the city, who want CBD vibrancy, for example, and really appreciate some of the art installations that have happened there and some of the activities that have happened there. We love our events, Balloons Over Waikato, which in itself is a form of creativity. The Hamilton Gardens Arts Festival, thankfully that had been completed by the time COVID came around, but they'll still have to get going again. And we've already discussed how will we help these iconic festivals and events to get going again, because they're lifeblood to the city. We love those things. And those are what bring people together in public places. So I don't think it's a very easy fix, but we are committed towards bringing life back into our community, all parts of it, because we feel that they fit together. Community and the arts and culture, the economy and arts and culture, all of those things need to stand together to be as strong as they can. So it's not a specific answer, it's more of a value that we hold, that yes, we do have to play a part in putting this back together again.
Yeah, there are a couple of additional kind of observations in alignment with that question around that this is a great opportunity to hone in on New Zealand culture and artistic practice with borders being closed. So it's a great way to really allow local artists and local productions to flourish and to get out and to support those when you can. And also to support them online when you can. There are a range of artists and arts organisations and theatre productions and bands and everyone who have stuff online that you can support online, making sure that when we go back into events, utilising local practitioners for any HCC supported event would be great. Having local
100%.
councils supporting local artists, and realising that sponsorship from businesses will be down after the fact, and that will double the impact on our arts community, and it will be interesting to explore what the role of the council in amongst other funders and other sources can be in supporting that and having it be that thriving place that brings communities together. Because not only does it support our artists, it supports our communities and connecting through those different experiences.
Absolutely. Look, I'm 100% behind local first. Absolutely. Because you know what? We already have it all here. We have the most fantastic talent in all forms of artistic creativity. We are the home of kingitanga, just up the river. We have tangata whenua and their strength that they bring to our city. And that's what we need to embrace. We have that in bucket loads. It's special. We need to grab hold of it. And I would say challenge people further than that and saying all things local. We can't fix the whole world, unfortunately. But what we can do is play a part in fixing our place. And we can only do that in cooperation with tangata whenua, with creative groups, with our creative talent and other organisations. If we work together, we're going to get further than if we pull apart. It's just what we've got to do going forward.
Definitely. One more question here. It's a question around measuring well-being and targets for well-being. It's directed to HCC representatives, but also I think open to anyone if you have any thoughts around the way that well-being can be measured, or what the impact of well-being is and how it needs to fit onto a balance sheet some of the time, in terms of how it's measured and how that relates to investment, not only for councils but for other funders as well. So it'd be interesting to know how HCC has ideas around measuring well-being, and also if any of our other panellists have any thoughts around where that sits.
Can I jump in first before that and just say that my impression of the word well-being is that it's a placeholder word that probably can't be defined because it's so huge. It's probably useful in terms of the actions that it generates and the way that it connects to things, but I do think that probably it needs to be held quite lightly. And obviously we want to take it seriously, but when you actually put analytic pressure on it, it is going to just come to pieces. So I just want to say that before the other more sensible stuff is said.
No, I think that was very sensible, actually. Look, you're right. Wellbeing is as big or as small as you want. That's why Council has taken a step back and said, how do we define those four wellbeings? And the two most relevant here are social and cultural. How do we define them? And then we were right in the middle of a process of going out to the community and saying, oh, hello, this is what we think wellbeing might be. What is it to you? because council can only do this much of the solution. We're not the whole player, we're just part of a team. So we need to define with the community what they feel well-being is, tie it into our definition of well-being, sort out some actions, some tangible actions, because there's no point in having a lofty vision of well-being if you're not actually going to do something and implement it. And then we derive our measurables from that. So we're a little bit away, but for example, one metric might be about the number of community-based arts events across the calendar year, for example. It's got to go beyond the metrics of economy, but it would look at one measure of success to me are we able to get the theatres, especially temporarily before the Waikato theatres open, but are we able to get events going on in the theatres again? Are we able to offer a range of activities and events? Are we able to see craft markets back in the city and those kind of things? Those are short-term measures. But in the long term, we want to deliver the Waikato Regional Theatre. We have to have a major theatre in Hamilton, and we've got to see that through. So it just depends what you are measuring. And Andy can comment on this because this is certainly more his speciality than mine. But when I was chair of the Community and Services, we worked very closely with a lot of ethnic communities. So one measure of success would be for those communities to celebrate Diwali again, celebrate Chinese New Year and Lantern Festival again, and to attract the wider community to share in those activities. I'm not going to speak for Tangata Whenua because we have someone here who can, but just 1 week before the lockdown, the Tauranga Waiwai regatta was cancelled. Can we get that going again? Can we get the whole cultural explosion that is around the regatta up and going again? To me, those are real tangible measures that we can say, yep, in the short term, we've been successful at getting these up and running.
Yeah, and the other side of, how do we measure the complexity of well-being is often perception surveys get utilised. When we think a place that we feel like we belong, that's something that we can ask some questions that give results that become meaningful for us as a community as well. So.
And it really does depend what the community say to us, because what we agree to do will be reflected in our long-term plan. There will be the projects that we choose to put in our long-term plan that go out to public consultation and then are supported by the community. And we should deliver what we say we will do in our long-term plan.
So there's still scope for people to have their say on the Future Hamilton website, and when the long-term plan comes out, also have their say.
Absolutely. I'm a massive proponent for public participation in civics. I want to hear from people as much as possible. And we were in the middle of doing that for all 4 well-beings, and then bang, all stopped.
It's great that we can have this discussion to bring that along and keep it in everyone's minds. I'm aware that we're running to the end of time, so I just want to give everyone an opportunity for one last parting thought. We'll just work our way around the screen. So I'm going to pass it on to Andy to start with this time.
Kia ora. My final thought is just really one of deep gratitude and appreciation for being part of a community where I do get inspired, and when I sit, and I'm not a practicing artist, but I do think I'm an artist, but I'm more than that, I think I'm a friend of the arts, and I love that I get to have conversations which spark my insights, and I get to witness performances and see art and experience the depth of it in a way that I'm better because I'm a part of such a magnificent community. So again, thank you for allowing me to share the screen with you. Thank you, Jeremy, for the work that you and your team do, and just so many of the artists who I'm deeply aware that this is not an easy time. Deeply aware that this isn't just a nice freedom to just create. There's heaps of additional pressures going on, but I want to say thank you. So, kia ora.
Awesome, thank you. Laura.
Hi, I just want to thank you for having me along here today, and thank all the fellow panelists and everyone who's watching. I suppose I'm reflecting a little bit, as we've been speaking as well, we're talking a lot about connection and how we're finding ways to connect while being physically apart. I'm also taken with the fact that this has offered us some opportunities to increase access in certain ways. For example, physical access. There's shows going online that are being subtitled. There's shows that go online that are having NZSL interpretation. There are discussions that we're having that are more accessible to more people because we're putting them online as opposed to having them in rooms. So I suppose that's something that's inspiring me moving forward, and the hope that we can retain some of that when we do go back into our physical connected lives. And also just, I think, everybody's touched me with what they've said, but Stephanie, I think, that giving us permission to feel, what I'm trying to say, when you said at the beginning about just taking time to anchor into that, what creativity is for each of us without feeling the pressure in this very different world that we're navigating. I took a lot of solace in that, because I think my journey has been up and down, as I'm sure so many have.
Awesome. Stephanie.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everybody. It's been really moving hearing different people's ideas and stories. It's been really beautiful. My last thought is, going back to what you were just saying, Laura, is that makers got to make. So if you're a person who's going to make, then please find ways to make, so that when we come out of this into the uncertain future, you are already making, so you are ready to move in whatever direction opens up for you at that point. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Paula? Oh, you're muted. Oh, cannot.
We can't hear you. Just wait a minute, wait.
Is that better?
Yes,
there
there
better?
you go.
There was something flashing on my screen, which just goes to show that technology isn't the total solution to everything. In fact, it's not. But look, thank you for being part of the panel. I appreciate it. I've also been moved to know that there is such richness and diversity in our community. I'm committed to playing my part to engage you guys with a further conversation about how we work together, because while I'd like to wave a magic wand and put it all right as soon as we're out of lockdown, I know I can't, and I know I can only do it together. But hey, thank you to everyone out there in our wider community for the amazing creativity and heart that you've shown during COVID. As I said at the very beginning, it's made me laugh, it's made me smile, it's connected me with people. I'm really looking forward, however, to getting into the same space and place, whether it's the theatre, whether it's Garden Place, whether it's a local park, and being physically among people again and sharing the joy of arts and creativity. I look forward to seeing you all at one of those occasions very soon. Take care.
And Horomona.
Well, thank you for opening up this discussion. No doubt there are questions to everything that has been said. I suppose we just really want to leave with two different types of sayings. One, once again acknowledging ko tātou ariki nui, kingi tūheitia, pō tau te whirowhiro te tuawhitu, me te whānau te kingitanga tainui waka. That's where we reside, and they are the custodians of the space. They're the mana whenua of Waikato where we are at the moment. And the challenges of our people here in the Waikato and in the wider New Zealand. We have an old saying, ko tāu raurau, ko tāku raurau, ka ora te iwi. It's really widely known. With your food basket, with my food basket, you know, we're able to feed our people. And it's not just the food that we consume for nourishment, it's the food that we consume for enlightenment. It's the food that we consume to make our bodies warm, not only physically, but both physically and spiritually as well. And so just really want to leave that proverb with you, as well as, you know, being a typical artist like Jeremy and I are. You know, one proverb that I love, I always have a look at every now and then is, you know, for every artist, it goes like this, you know, art has the power to transform. It has the power to illuminate. It has the power to educate. It also has the power to inspire and to motivate. Thus the power of creativity in the things we do called art. And so that is part of the healing for us. And no matter how little, how small, what culture, what ethnicity, where you are located, there is no pinpointing. We are all a part of art, and art is a part of us. It is in all of us. And if you can breathe, you are art. If you can hear, if you can feel, that is a part of you. You have emotion, you have physicality, you have spiritualism. Whether you are an atheist or whether you are religious, art is part of the movement that you do every day. And so, just in finishing off, ko tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou, pai mārire kia tātou.
Awesome. So I'm just going to finish with saying it's through the arts where we grow, where we reach understanding, and where we find common ground in a rapidly changing and complex world. Artistic imagination and creativity are not added bonuses for society. They're not the icing on the cake. They are integral to the human spirit and to human aspirations. They are an essential part of what makes us human. Art thinks about the world in its current state and can reimagine the world as it could be. So I'd like to say thank you to everyone for being here this evening. Thank you to everyone for tuning in at home and for your questions. I'm sure if you have any other questions, you can reach out to us at Creative Waikato or reach out to Hamilton City Council or even reach out to any of these marvellous artists here who will be willing to help you along your way. Have a great evening, be well, be safe, and we'll see you next time.